Welcome. If you are just joining us, we continue to follow some breaking news tonight in Minneapolis, where today a gunman opened fire on the Annunciation Catholic Church as innocent children and men and women sat inside for Mass. In the last hour, we received an update from authorities who said there were 19 total victims. 2 of them, an 8-year-old student and a 10-year-old student, unfortunately and sadly died at the scene.
14 other children were also shot, as well as 3 adults who were in their 80s. The police chief says all of those victims are expected to survive. We also heard from the Archbishop of the Twin Cities Archdiocese at the news conference within the last hour. Here's what he had to say.
But how sad it is, for sure, not only for the families who are directly involved, but indeed for families everywhere who feel the threat that comes from an event, a tragedy like today's.
Well, this tragedy played out at Annunciation Church around 8:30 this morning on West 54th Street in Minneapolis, on the city's far south side, just west of 35W near the Tangletown neighborhood. Gordon Severson was at the news conference that was held within the last hour, and he begins our team coverage tonight. Gordon?
Yeah, Julie, in this updated press conference, we learned a lot of new information about what happened here at the church just behind me. You mentioned that the 2 children ages 8 and 10 passed away, died in this shooting, but we learned more about the other 14 kids who were also injured in this shooting. All of them are ages range from 6 to 15 years old. We also learned there were 3 adults also there, all of them parishioners, all of them in their 80s. We are also learning a little more about the investigation. The police chief told us this afternoon that right now, as we speak, they are conducting 4 search warrants. One of them is happening here at the church behind me, and the other 3 are all happening at residences that are connected to the shooter. And the chief confirmed with us just about an hour ago that they did find additional firearms at those residences. And he says that there has been a lot of heroic actions here, not only from his officers, but we're also hearing a lot of the people inside the church stepped up to save lives here. We heard from the principal here at the school, and we also heard from the governor this afternoon.
Within seconds of this situation beginning, our teachers were heroes. Children were ducked down. Adults were protecting children. Older children were protecting younger children. And as we heard earlier, it could have been significantly worse without their heroic action.
And we often come to these and say, these unspeakable tragedies, or there's no words for this. There shouldn't be words for these types of incidents because they should not happen. And there's no words that are going to ease the pain of the families today. On behalf of all...
And all of the speakers this afternoon all said the same thing, that this situation could have been much worse if it wasn't for those heroic actions from police officers running in and the teachers and students inside. I did ask the chief if he had a rough estimate of how many people were inside the church when this happened. He said they're still figuring that out, but said a lot of people were inside when this happened. Now, we also learned a little bit more from the chief that he confirmed that this shooter did post a few videos on the internet kind of a manifesto, if you will. He said that those videos have been taken down. They worked with the FBI to take them down, but investigators are looking through them to try to figure out any sort of information about a motive here. And we are learning about a vigil that's going to be happening here tonight. So I'll send it back to you because we do have a lot of information that's coming in, and other colleagues that are here that are also gathering that information as we speak.
All right, thanks, Gordon. And the Archdiocese announced at 7 p.m. there'll be a prayer service at Holy Angels. There'll be several other vigils going on throughout the Twin Cities tonight as well. Well, as Gordon mentioned, there are still so many questions tonight about why this happened, but as more information comes out, a timeline of today's events is starting to take shape.
And we want to go to Chris Orapsky right now, who's going to bring us up to speed on the day's events. Chris?
Yeah, Rena, Julie, the call of an active shooter at a church sparked panic throughout the city this morning. And when the details started to emerge of what actually happened, the reality started to set in.
Just before 8:30, day 2 of school at Annunciation Catholic School near Lyndale and 54th Street. Children, staff, and community members assembled for the first community mass of the new school year.
During the mass, a gunman approached on the outside on the side of the building and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the mass. Shooting through the windows, He struck children and worshipers that were inside the building.
The shooter, dressed in all black with camo pants, allegedly barricaded several doors of the church before firing a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol.
Police officers from the Minneapolis Police Department immediately responded, entered the church, and attempted to provide first aid and rescue some of the children that were hiding throughout the building.
2 children, ages 8 and 10, were struck and killed. 17 others, 14 of whom are children between 6 and 14 years old, were hit.
These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Police confirmed the shooter, identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, later died by suicide in the back of the church. Victims were rushed to hospitals as parents awaited sight of their kids, processing the horror of what happened.
This kind of act of evil should never happen, and it happens far too often.
And that's really the point of when we started to learn more about the suspect, the shooter in this case. The mayor also saying there that this was, think of this as your family. Think of it as any family that you're close with. As Minneapolis and as a state and as a country, we are one, and that we should be empathic and sympathetic towards all the victims here. It was a powerful speech that he gave there, and yeah.
Yeah, I think we all are. I think everyone's feeling this pretty deeply. Chris, thank you so much.
Yep.
Well, as we mentioned, there is some good news. Those who were injured in today's shooting, many of whom were critical condition, are all expected to survive. That includes 14 children and 3 adults in their 80s.
And throughout the day, we've been learning new information about them. Ian Russell live now at HCMC in Minneapolis, where nearly a dozen of those victims are currently receiving care. Ian?
Yeah, Rena, Julie, I think that is the important thing to talk about right now, is that those victims are expected to survive. And as you mentioned, that's coming from that press conference we just got from city and state officials not too long ago, where Chief Brian O'Hare is saying all those victims, I believe, have been reunited with their parents now, and all of them are expected to survive. So the good news out of this right now is hearing that. Here at HCMC, we've been here since about 9:15 this morning. The initial call for a mass casualty event that was paged out to all the doctors out here came at about 8:45, and in that time frame, and then just 15-20 minutes, they're able to sort of quickly mobilize and quickly respond to get their services up and ready for everyone that was going to be coming out this way. In total, HCMC at about 12:15 was the most recent update on the numbers that they have. They have 10 people here. It's 1 adult and 6 kids that were in critical condition, and 1 adult and 2 kids that were non-life threatening. And this is obviously such a difficult and tragic situation for all involved to deal with. But these doctors and these folks here at HCMC, this is the second major event they've worked through in the past 2 days.
Again, we've had 2 mass casualty events happen in the last 24 hours. I mean, that does take a toll. But we also have to recognize that we are here as a critical resource for our community, and we have to take time to process, the care that we deliver in these situations, and we have to be able to move forward because we are obviously needed.
Now, another group of patients were taken to Children's Minnesota. 7 of those kids were taken to Children's Minnesota. 1 of them has been released. The ages of that group of kids were between ages 9 and 16 years old. So again, the good news, though, is hearing from Chief O'Hare today saying that all these victims are expected to survive, but obviously their lives are changed. We don't know the status of how they are right now or how things are going to look like in the future. But Chief O'Hare talks quite a bit about this in other instances, is saying no matter what happens, lives are changed in moments like these, and I think it's fair to say it's the same thing that's going to be happening here. So obviously a lot more information. We're still pressing HCMC to see if we can get some more information about the status of the folks that are here, how many have been released, how many are still being treated, things like that. Still working on getting some more details, but I'll keep you updated when those details come out, guys.
Thank you, Ian.
Well, tonight the heartbroken Tangletown community is struggling as neighbors wait for answers in this unfolding tragedy.
Our Jessica Hart has been in the neighborhood all day now. She joins us now live with the latest. Hi, Jessica.
Hey, Rena, it's very quiet right now. A lot of the emergency vehicles that were here just 2 hours ago have since left, but you can see that it's pretty quiet here. There's not too many police officers hanging around, but this is not what the scene looked like early this morning. So let me take you back to around 9:30 this morning when we arrived on scene. This entire street of West 54th Street had emergency responders, ambulances, police squad cars, fire trucks lining both sides of the streets. The ambulance was actually parked in the middle of the street. Police had formed kind of a perimeter around the school, and the way that they were reconnecting kids with their parents, they did it in shifts, honestly. A lot of the people in the neighborhood tell me that there's actually, the gymnasium is right behind the school, and that's where they believe they were keeping the kids. So you would see officers escort groups of parents, maybe like 6 or 8 at a time, to the back there. It would be a couple of minutes, and then you would see kind of the parents walk back out with their kids. And every single parent that I saw leave with their kids was either holding their child's hand or had their hands on their child's shoulder. And just the looks in those kids' eyes, some of them were just kind of blank stares as they work to process what exactly just happened to them, what they witnessed. A lot of kids looked fearful and scared, and you could see that in their parents too, but also a sense of relief that their child was okay and they were able to get them out of harm's way and back home to them. Now, none of them looked like they wanted to talk, and we didn't approach anyone as they left, but you could just tell that they wanted to get out of here. They wanted to get back home and to get their kid as far away from the scene as they possibly could. Now, a lot of the neighbors also came out here just to kind of see what was going on and see if they could help in any way if possible. A lot of them do have connections here to the school. Their kids went to school here. A woman I talked with said she got married at the church. So to see something like this happen so close to home here has really hit a lot of people. And it's just really hard for people to imagine that something like this happened in their neighborhood. You know, they heard the sirens this morning, but they were hoping it wouldn't amount to much. And then when they turned on the news, they saw that it was pretty devastating. Back to you.
All right, Jessica, thank you. Well, there are several vigils planned in the coming hours to honor and remember the victims of today's shooting. The Annunciation Church announced it will hold a public prayer vigil at 7 p.m. That's inside the Academy of Holy Angels High School gym, and that, of course, is in Richfield. At the same time, the Lutheran Church of Christ Redeemer encouraging the community to gather at its sanctuary in the Armitage neighborhood. And at 8, Protect Minnesota and Moms Demand Action will host a candlelight vigil at Minneapolis's Lyndhurst Park. Now, as the stories of survival continue to come in, none so far are more powerful than those from the young children who were inside the church as those shots rang out.
Our Lou Raguse talked to one of the young boys who shared his story with us earlier today. Lou joins us now with details. Lou?
Yes, after it was safe for the families to leave Annunciation, one of those families approached us. They wanted their 10-year-old son to share with us what it was like to be inside the church during the shooting. The boy's name is Weston, and he says he was seated near the stained glass windows where the shots were fired. He told us about hiding under the church pews when the group making it to the group then after that making it to the gymnasium and locking the doors in case the shooter was still coming. He says police arrived very quickly, and they, along with the school administrators, helped them feel safe. Weston's mom, who's on the PTA, happened to be nearby and saw the police cars, so she was able to reunite with her son very quickly. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of the story is that his good friend shielded Weston from the gunfire and was wounded in the process.
When you heard the shots, what went through your head?
I was like, the first one, I was like, what is that? I thought it was just something, then when I heard it again, I just ran under the pew, and then I covered my head. My friend Victor, saved me, though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit.
Your friend laid on top of you?
Yeah, and he got hit. He's really brave, and I hope he's good in the hospital.
And we hope Victor's doing well in the hospital, as well as all the other victims. Weston extended his prayers to all of them before the interview ended. He told us about how frequently during the school year they practice these active shooter drills in their school. He said they never actually have practiced one in the church, though, so it ended up being a little bit different. His grandfather told us that they're doing as well as anybody possibly can after something like this happens. But he says once something like this happens to people you know and your family, you think about it much differently. Back to you.
Lou, you have been there all day, and we've seen these things happen in other communities, but you have been watching these parents come together and reunite with their children all day long. What was that like?
You know, it was, it's happening right in front of you, and you almost feel like it's an invasion of privacy just to see it, because it's such a tender private moment. but at the same time, it's happening everywhere. And, to that note, we didn't seek out any kids and try to interview them or anything like that, but I'm thankful to this family for approaching us because they want the story to be told and for the truth of what went on inside of that building to get out into the public so that more people can denounce it and not look past it, not move on to the next thing.
Thank you so much. Well, late this afternoon, we received this powerful statement from Danielle Gunter, the mother of an 8th grade boy who was shot inside Annunciation this morning. It's long, but it's powerful. She wrote, "Our son was shot at school today inside a church praying with his classmates. Our hearts are shattered not only for him, but for everyone who is harmed. We grieve and we pray for the others who were shot, for their families and for those who lost loved ones, and for the first responders who raced into danger for others, for us. We thank them all." Our son shared with us that an MPD officer really helped him. He said the officer rendered aid, hugged him, reassured him, and prayed with him before getting into the ambulance. We asked for leaders to place armed security at schools to prevent another tragedy like this. There is no higher calling than keeping kids safe, and it starts with protecting them from evil in this world. We feel the pain, the anger, the confusion, and the searing reality that our lives will never be the same, yet we still have our child. Unlike others, we are blessed to hold on to him. We will help him rebuild his life, his trust, and his confidence. We don't want others to ever feel the same, and we pray that everyone touched by this tragedy can find the strength to begin rebuilding too.
Meanwhile, our investigative team has been busy all day trying to gather whatever information we can about the shooter tonight. Police named the gunman as 23-year-old Robin Westman.
And our sources have told us that he did attend Annunciation for 1 year. I misspoke earlier today saying that he graduated from Holy Angels. That is not true. We do understand he bounced around to several different schools and are working to confirm his school background. We do know that his mother was an employee at Annunciation for years until she retired in 2021. AJ Legault has been digging into their history all day, and he's in the newsroom now with the latest. AJ?
Yeah, hey there, Julie. Tonight we are learning more about the named killer, Robin Westman. Neighbors have been sharing new photos with us of Robin. You're looking at them now. They're obviously a number of years old. He appears to be a teenager in these photos. The neighbors came out and shared with our team who's been out gathering information, and we've also been able to translate some of Robin's diary entries from what police are calling a manifesto that was scheduled to be posted after the shootings took place. You know, that manifesto has since been taken down by the FBI, but police and FBI are using that video of the manifesto as part of their investigation. The manifesto is written using Russian letters to write English words. Think of the word gun. You know, they use that word, instead of writing the word gun in Russian, it actually uses the Russian letters to spell out the English word gun. So it's taking us quite a while to try to translate exactly what is there. And, you know, while we're not going to cover most of what has been written because it is extremely violent, it deals with a lot of suicidal and homicidal thoughts, some of the entries do give context to today's mass shooting. We have video that we should be showing you here of a picture that we took from the video. Right now you're looking at some of the manifesto that was posted, but one of the images that was posted was a drawing of the church and like a handwritten sketch, and we've translated the caption in the top left to say Annunciation by memory, meaning he sketched out what the church looked like from memory. Now, we know Robin went to Annunciation Church for at least a year and that his mother worked there. A source close to the school tells KARE 11 in the year Robin went to Annunciation, there were consistent disciplinary issues, although we don't know exactly what those consisted of. In the diary, an entry written on May 23rd of this year, Robin wrote an entry describing an obsession with mass shootings, specifically school shootings. Robin wrote about having memories of the obsession dating back to 7th grade and talking about the shootings with friends at a young age. The diary or manifesto describes that the comments scared children and were later reported to adults. Then on August 20th, in one of the last entries that was posted online, Robin writes about visiting the church and the plans to carry out the act. Robin writes about the teachers being in a training week that was happening at the time and how they were probably receiving active shooter training. And the killer wrote, "I bet they won't anticipate an attack in the first week." Also discussed checking all the doors to see how they could be barricaded and considered using lumber. You know, Chief O'Hara told us earlier that they did find 2x4s that were used to actually trap people into the school so that no one could get out while this mass shooting was taking place. On August 21st, a final entry in one of the diaries. It discusses practicing at a shooting range leading up to the event. And my team was just sending me notes here in the last few minutes as we're getting more and more translations from Russian to English and figuring out exactly what the named killer was writing about. And he was concerned as of July 29th about money, that he didn't have enough money to purchase the rifle. Chief O'Hara told us that the rifle, the shotgun, and the handgun appeared to have been all purchased legally, but purchased recently. And we can tell from the manifesto that it appears as of the end of July, those firearms had yet to be purchased.
AJ, obviously significant that the shooter visited the school the week before. Is there a significance to him going to the shooting range?
Well, if he didn't have the firearms, as of the end of July, at least the rifle, from what we can tell, he's writing about wanting to make sure they all work. That the scopes, the red dot scope specifically, was written about, were worked and sighted in. So it appears that he would have been there practicing and learning how the guns worked and how they shot.
Well, and it's interesting, too, the chief confirmed what your team had found, that he had no criminal history.
Yeah, this 23-year-old did not have a criminal history. Like we said, we were hearing from folks that there was mental health issues that folks who knew him were aware of dating back a number of years. But certainly, as you just said, Julie, nothing that rose to a criminal level, and certainly nothing that prevented him from going out and legally purchasing these firearms, as the police chief explained.
All right, AJ, we appreciate your investigative work. Thanks so much.
Well, we learned from our crews out on the scene, and of course from Chief O'Hara today, that the police served 3 warrants at homes that were connected to the shooter and 1 at the school itself. One of the places that was searched was an apartment in Richfield and the shooter's dad's home in the Wyndham neighborhood. This afternoon, we're told police removed evidence from the apartment on Lyndale Avenue South, including at least 1 firearm. Meanwhile, police went through the shooter's family home on the 5700 block of 1st Avenue South in Minneapolis. Neighbors we spoke to say they didn't know Westman well, but know the dad and the stepmom, and would see the shooter in the neighborhood at block parties sometimes. They say it's a tight-knit neighborhood and that many of the people who live there either went to Annunciation or still have kids at the school.
Shock. We live in a very, very close-knit neighborhood. We live in a very safe neighborhood. A lot of the neighborhood kids went to Annunciation, so we all know each other.
Coming up at 5, we're going to hear from a neighbor who lives in the same apartment building as the shooter. Of course, reaction continuing to pour in at this hour from here in Minnesota, across the country. President Trump says he has been briefed on the situation and ordered all U.S. flags to be flown at half-staff to honor the victims. This morning, he asked all Americans to join him in praying for everyone involved. Now, this shooting unfolded on the final day of the Democratic National Committee's summer meeting in Minneapolis. After learning of the incident, the DNC cut today's session short.
Party leaders are in town for the DNC meeting. They were shaken by news of the shooting today. Many of them have dealt with similar mass shootings in their home states. DNC Chair Ken Martin, the former Minnesota DFL chair, addressed party members this morning, calling this a tragic day for Minneapolis. Afterward, members from across the country embraced before leaving town. Meanwhile, Minnesota DFL Party Chair Richard Carlbaum released a statement saying this epidemic must stop. No child should have to fear being at school, and no parent should have to worry about the child's safety in the classroom. All options must be on the table to end gun violence in our communities. And Minnesota Senate GOP Minority Leader Mark Johnson responded today as well, saying there's no place for this kind of violence and attacks on a sacred place, and children are especially egregious. As a state, we stand together against these violent acts and the wicked individuals who perpetrate them. We also caught up today with U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, whose former staffer had 3 children in Annunciation this morning.
These are innocent kids. These are 6-year-olds praying in a church, just gunned down through the windows, 8 and 10-year-old dead. Their families will never be the same. And those kids that were in there, nearly all of them seeing someone being shot, that's going to change their lives forever too.
Well, this afternoon, we did hear from Lisa Demuth, the Speaker of the Minnesota House. Lisa Demuth is calling for prayers for the children, families, staff, and first responders who have been impacted. Just over 2 months ago, she was one of the lawmakers most vocal after the violent tragedy that killed Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband and injured State Senator John Hoffman and his wife.